Latest updates on business news, market trends, and exclusive interviews with industry leaders, as well as insights on emerging small and medium enterprises in the commercial sector. Business Watch, your business leader.
From Gwenya, beautiful. Still I have question, was it really an offside?
Kude lesinye isikhathi ngaphandle kwalesi
abaresearche bafunze.
Being risky means ukuthi nalokuwa kwayo kulula.
Nathi kufuna sente ukukhicita lokusembili.
Good afternoon, this is Market View. Thank you for tuning in. My name is Lungilele Makakula. Interfreight of Eswatini has sealed a game-changing partnership with Corridor Logistico di Maputo of Mozambique, signing a landmark memorandum of understanding. The deal promises to streamline the flow of goods, improving the reception, handling, storage and dispatch of cargo moving from Maputo to Eswatini and South Africa. But beyond logistics, what does this strategic economic tie-up mean for Eswatini's economy? Stay with us as we break down the impact and opportunities ahead with Business Eswatini's head of trade, Musa Masego. Then later, the International Labour Organization has released its 2024 global estimates on child labour, and the numbers are rising. Stay with us as we unpack this report. For now, let's go straight to our first story. The Central Bank of Eswatini has just dropped its April-May statistical bulletin, and the numbers are strong. Credit extended to businesses stood at a whopping 11.6 billion emalangeni at the end of April 2025. That's a 0.8% rise from March and a massive 20% jump compared to the same time last year. The data signals growing confidence in the business sector and possibly stronger economic momentum in the months ahead.
The April-May monthly statistical release shared by the Central Bank of Eswatini today states that credit extended to businesses stood at 11.6 billion emalangeni at the end of April this year, up by 0.8% month-on-month and 20% year-on-year. The expansion, according to the central bank, was supported by the growth in credit to the following subsectors: agriculture and forestry, 6.9%, community, social and personal services, 2.2%, construction, 0.6%, transport and communications, 0.4%, and real estate, 0.1%. However, the following subsectors reflected contractions during the same period: distribution and tourism, negative 10.2%, manufacturing negative 4.3%, and mining and quarrying negative 4.0%. A further breakdown of the credit to business by size reflected that both credit to large enterprises and small and medium enterprises improved during the month under review. Credit to small and medium enterprises rose by 2.4% to 3.7 billion emalangeni, whilst credit to large enterprises rose marginally by 0.1% to 7.9 billion emalangeni. In terms of composition, large enterprises accounted for 68.1% of total credit to businesses, while small and medium enterprises constituted the remaining 31.9%. The Central Bank of Eswatini says in April this year, credit extended to the private sector amounted to 21.3 billion emalangeni, marking a 0.7% decrease month-on-month and 10.4% increase year-on-year. The month-on-month decline was mainly driven by a contraction in credit to other sectors and households and non-profit institutions serving households. The central bank has further shared that the liquidity position of the banking sector stood at 7.5 billion emalangeni at the end of the review month, reflecting a month-on-month and year-on-year growth of 0.9% and 4.4% respectively. The Central Bank of Eswatini has stated that the provisional reserves position declined at the end of May this year on account of a net outflow of rands from trades with commercial banks and the settlement of fiscal obligations. As a result, the reserves fell by 10.1% month-on-month and 1% year-on-year, reaching 9.4 billion emalangeni. In line with this decrease, the import cover fell to 2.1 months in May this year from 2.4 months in April this year. Reporting, Nelson Langamandla, visuals from the Central Bank of Eswatini.
Enterprise of Eswatini has sealed a game-changing partnership with Corridor Logistico de Maputo of Mozambique, signing a landmark memorandum of understanding. The deal promises to streamline the flow of goods, improving the reception, handling, storage and dispatch of cargo moving from Maputo to Eswatini and SA. But beyond logistics, what does this strategic economic tie-up mean for Eswatini's economy? We're joined now by, stay with us as we break down the impact and opportunities ahead with business Eswatini's Head of Trade, Musa Masego. Very good afternoon, Musa. Thank you for joining us on Market View this afternoon. Talk to us about this huge deal. What does this huge deal mean for Eswatini's economy? What opportunities has it unlocked?
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to you all. First of all, it's just to say Business Eswatini is really excited about the latest developments. This happened in the margins of our business engagement with the Mozambique business community. For a number of years now, we have been aware, obviously, of some of the challenges that the business community has been facing in terms of doing business with Mozambique, particularly some of the administrative challenges as well as a few cross-border issues. So in bringing together these two giants within the transport and logistics sector, it's just the first step that they have taken in ensuring that cross-border trade between Eswatini and Mozambique becomes a bit more seamless and efficient. It also opens up a few more doors in terms of the transit development between Eswatini, South Africa, and Mozambique. And what we're hoping that will happen ultimately is as we become more efficient in the way we move goods between the two countries, we will start to see trade, particularly between Eswatini and Mozambique, increase. This obviously becomes very good for strengthening our supply chain, particularly when we're looking at using the Maputo port as a transit port for some of our overseas markets.
Just talking about Interfreight, we know that it has expertise. Talk about their expertise. They've been in this business for over 4 decades. What does this mean for Eswatini in terms of moving goods?
So in obviously taking a partner or a company like Interfreight who have quite a bit of experience within that sector, we're looking at improving or strengthening the capacity of our local private sector to be able to effectively handle some of the administrative hurdles that we've encountered before. With the expected increase in traffic, we're also looking at increasing job opportunities, particularly those based around the border areas, whether you're looking at Lavumisa and or the Lumahasha border, but as well as just like I mentioned earlier, beginning those cultural ties as well. As the remarks made by the president of Business Eswatini during the business engagement, a lot of the times we are faced with certain miscommunications just because of this different social and cultural differences between the two countries. So it is expected that this partnership will also help us get over some of those hurdles.
Certainly, it also limits border challenges, creating a vibrant route for commerce.
Yes, indeed. I think what we have seen post-COVID was the need to diversify some of our supply chains. A lot of the trade that the country has historically is obviously between South Africa and our largest port that we use at the moment is Durban Port. We have experienced some challenges with the Durban Port, but in order to ensure business continuity, we do need to explore viable options and alternatives. And this partnership, which we are hoping is the first of many, is obviously a gateway to improving those trade efficiencies.
Thank you, Musa, for that insight. Thank you for your time. That was Musa Nhlego from Business Eswatini. Stay with us. After the break, we talk about child labor.
Eswatini TV has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Eswatini Communications Commission. We are committed to reporting news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that does not amount to hate speech or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. For any complaints of our programming, please contact us on 2411-9600 or email info@eswatinitv.co.za. You can also contact the Eswatini Communications Commission on 2406-7000 or write a letter to ECCOM on PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Email address is info@ecom.org.za.
When you choose your adventures, you do so with an open heart and a desire for the unexpected. You embark on journeys to discover new worlds full of wonder. You choose a path to awaken your senses, a world to make you look up and realize just how inspiring this life can be. Arrive and awaken your heart. Explore life in ways only thought possible in your dreams. Discover just how far you go to expand your understanding of life's greatest mysteries. There's just one place on this planet with so much to offer. Now is the time for you to have the royal experience.
Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. The International Labour Organization has released its 2024 global estimates on child labour, and the numbers are raising alarms. But how does child labour tie into the economy? Well, when children are working instead of learning, the future workforce loses skills, productivity drops, and poverty cycles deepen, leaving economies stand not stronger. To unpack the report and dig deeper into how child labour is not just a social crisis, but an economic one, we are now joined live by joined live from Abidjan by Jean-Marie Kagabo, Africa Specialist on Child Labour at the International Labour Organization. Very good afternoon, sir. Thank you for joining us here at Market View. What are the key global findings of the latest child labour report, and how do they actually compare to previous years?
Thank you for hosting me. I would like to start by saying that there are some welcome news when it comes to the elimination of child labor. We have started to measure child labor since the year 2000. So today it is the 7th edition of our measurement. When we started to measure in the year 2000, the global figure was of 245 million children in child labor. Today, the figure is 138 million. So that means a reduction of almost 100 million. It's a reduction of almost half of the figure that we had in the year 2000. So that's a good news. And when you look at the different global estimates, there is a clear decrease. The decrease that we see is in all regions. We see the decrease in Asia compared to our last global estimate, which were in the year 2020. In Asia, the decrease was by 43%. In Latin America, the decrease was by 11%. And in Sub-Saharan Africa, the decrease was by 10%. So these are good news. So I said that the global figure today is 138 million. For Sub-Saharan Africa, the figure is 87 million. This represents 2/2 of the global figure. It's alarming, but there is progress. We did some modeling to see when we could reach zero child labor globally. This would really depend on the efforts that are invested into the fight against child labor. If globally we want child labor to end by 2030, we need to multiply by 11 the efforts that we are doing today. If we want child labor to end by 2045, we need to multiply our efforts by 7. If we want to end child labor by 2060, we need to multiply our efforts by 4. So it means it's possible, but a lot of effort needs to be done. That would be my answer to your question.
Okay, so what sectors or industries remain affected by child labor in our region?
Child labor, we find it mainly in the agriculture sector, globally 61%. We find child labor in industry globally around 23%. And then in the services, around 13%. By industry, we mean mining, we mean manufacturing. By services, we mean mainly domestic work, and we mean petty trade.
What are the main drivers behind the persistence of child labor in the SADC region?
When you look at child labor, it's mainly a developmental issue. So looking at Africa, looking at Southern Africa, the main key developmental issues include, for instance, poverty. They include limited access to education, prevalence of agricultural and informal employment, adult and youth employment and labor market conditions, inadequate social protection, socio-cultural and demographic factors. So when you look at those developmental challenges, it's by addressing those that we can also address child labor. Child labor is at the same time a cause and a consequence of underdevelopment.
So what urgent actions does the ILO recommend to government, civil society, communities to try and eliminate child labor in the region?
So all the measures that we suggest are about mainstreaming child labor fight into the developmental programs. So, for instance, the very first one, most important, is about education and social protection. The more we can bring schooling to rural areas for access to education to our children, the better. The same social protection measures that allow, in the case of shock, to limit the effects of those shocks. That's the main important measure. The other one is related to the decent work for parents. So we need to find jobs for the parents so that the parents and other caregivers can send their children to school. We need legal and institutional frameworks. We need legal protection for children. We also need to take into consideration the different contexts into which child labor occurs. It's not the same context everywhere. And lastly, we need political will and international cooperation. As I said, child labor is a developmental issue. To tackle it, governments need to have physical space. But not all the countries are comfortable with their physical space. That's why we need international cooperation.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Kakabo, for unpacking that report for us. That was Mr. Kakabo live from Abidjan, just unpacking the recently released child labor report. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. After the break, we take a look at today's market analysis, which is the final segment of this program. Stay with us.
Eswatini TV has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Eswatini Communications Commission. We are committed to reporting news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that does not amount to hate speech or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. For any complaints of our programming, please contact us on 2411-9600 or email info@eswatinitv.co.za. You can also contact the Eswatini Communications Commission on 2406-7000 or write a letter to ECCOM on PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Email address is info@ecom.org.sz.
When you choose your adventures, you do so with an open heart and a desire for the unexpected. You embark on journeys to discover new worlds full of wonder. You choose a path to awaken your senses, a world to make you look up and realize just how inspiring this life can be. Arrive and awaken your heart. Explore life in ways only thought possible in your dreams. Discover just how far you go to expand your understanding of life's greatest mysteries. There's just one place on this planet with so much to offer. Now is the time for you to have the royal experience.
Welcome back. It's 23 minutes after 2. We get into our final segment with Sanele. We take a look at today's market analysis. Good afternoon, Sanele. Welcome to Market View. What's happening in the markets today? We see that oil prices have surged, the dollar has dropped, and markets are being held by multiple cross currents today. What's happening?
Thank you, Lungelele, and good afternoon to the viewer. So what we're seeing in the markets happening, Lungelele, was, that anticipated outcome between the China and the U.S. trade talks that were happening in London, and the world was somehow waiting to see what kind of a deal was going to come out from there between the U.S. and the U.K. and the mainland China. So in reaction to those news, what we're seeing is markets are generally all red across the globe. That's purely because we of the outcome of those news, Lungelele. If you start in the U.S., what we heard coming out of the U.S. was, when you looked at the outcome, when you followed the press briefing coming out of the White House, you get the sense that really nothing has changed. We are just seeing a temporal reset to the status quo that existed post Liberation Day, after we saw that deal between the U.S. and China, after those tariffs flew up to 154% and 88% coming through from China. But right now, what we're seeing, the deal is somehow resets that, and sadly, again, what we're seeing again is there is a bit of worry because President Trump, just after announcing those good news, supposedly, he comes out to say that he is not at all reneging on those, unilateral tariffs against certain countries. So there is still the tariff fear that is rippling across markets, such that if you look in the U.S., the figures that came out, with inflation cooling down, somehow would have expected yesterday to be quite a good day in Wall Street, but it wasn't, purely because it shows that those tariff fears weigh heavily on markets, because we would expect that with inflation cooling down, then investors are going to expect that the Federal Reserve Bank will start cutting the interest rates, but markets remained on a negative trajectory, with the Nasdaq losing some 99 points in yesterday's trade. And if you move across to London and across the pond, again, it's the same story. That issue of those trade deal, that uncertainty around the trade deal, and Germany there was the hardest hit in terms of today's trade. You see in terms of all trade volumes, of losing about 1.16%, which translates to 278.78 points in overall trade volumes, purely because it seems a deal is nowhere in front, and there's the threat of is nowhere in sight, and there's the threat of those unilateral tariffs. But we saw yesterday in London, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, they're tabling one of the biggest spending increases in the UK in recent history in the UK, but that has somehow factored into markets, but the overall sentiments around that trade deal weigh heavily and kept it on the negative. Same story around when you get to Japan. We see the Hang Seng losing some 331 points there, staying very firmly on that 24,000 mark. Those are the pre-COVID pandemic levels, Lungelele, and we've seen Hang Seng holding on to those levels for quite a couple of weeks now. It shows that sentiments have returned into the Hong Kong territory, but the tariff issue right now weighs heavily, and we saw that the deal that was reached between the US and China somehow involves those rare earth minerals, which are going to continue to be exported into the US, and that's going to continue to actually boost the tech sector. But there are still a lot of uncertainties around the tariffs and what the Trump administration will do next. Coming into South Africa, yes, we are seeing South Africa struggling to keep up with those news around tariffs, but sentiments around, the government of national unity. We are in winter. We've not heard talks of serious load shedding, so commerce is continuing to thrive even in winter. And overall, the price of gold seems to be somehow supporting trades in South Africa. But if you realize today, we're back at that 96,000, down from those 97,000 all-time highs that we saw yesterday. So there is still a bit of an issue around that China-US trade deal, but domestic sentiments within South Africa seem to be what is driving markets in the neighboring Southern Africa right now. And then you look into Eswatini, nothing has changed. So when we come into commodities, you will see gold against those uncertainties that are being thrown into the market. Somehow it's gained. We're back on that 3,400 mark. We just at 3,356 yesterday. And then when you come into Brent crude, losing quite a bit, but staying on a firmer level at that $68 per barrel, which is something we've not seen in a very long while, because, you know, the fact that there's a deal on the table, the fact that inflation is letting down in the US, the fact that we're seeing that huge spending bill in the UK, the fact that Europe continues that downward trajectory in their interest rate cut, somehow signals that global economic activity is not going to be as subdued as was once predicted. But there are still those geopolitical tensions that are playing in and weighing down on the price of Brent crude oil. And when you look into the currencies, you realize that the Lilangeni is weakened relatively across all currencies, but that weakening level somehow signals the fact that we are on a very strong level, that's maintaining that 17 level against the dollar, maintaining that 2060 level against the euro, and we're back on that 8.05 against the Japanese yen. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Sanele, for that analysis. We've come to the end of today's episode. Thank you for tuning in. This was Market View, the final episode this week. We'll see you again next week, Monday at exactly 2 p.m. Enjoy the rest of your day and have a lovely weekend.